This is ABC Radio Melbourne with Rafael Epstein.
12 minutes to 9, Michelle Ananda-Rajah joins us. She is the sitting Labor MP for the seat of Higgins. Thank you for coming in.
Hi, Raf. Thanks for having me.
Do you think these independent candidates are right that it could, if you had job sharing as an MP, you bring more people into politics, people who aren't represented?
Look, I think it's a real water cooler conversation starter, but I'm interested in real solutions that advance women rather than stunts that entrench the status quo. Here are some facts. We have in Australia amongst the most educated population of women we've ever had. In fact, we rank fourth in the OECD for tertiary qualified women. And yet the paradox is that in the OECD, we are also ranked number 2 for part-time work. That is disproportionately driven by women, whereby double the number of women compared to men work part-time. This has become normalised in Australia. It is as if it is in the air we breathe, in the water we drink. And we accept it. We accept that this is our lot in life, that the only way you can advance in this country is by working part-time. And so we don't think outside the box. And yet the highest office in the land, which is our federal parliament, should not be there to entrench the status quo. It should be there to break, if not smash, gendered norms. And that's exactly why I stepped into Parliament and politics.
Why do you use the word stunt to describe what they're doing?
Well, I think that, a stunt is something I see as drawing attention, but not really delivering a realistic pathway to an outcome. And what I want to see are genuine reforms that can actually change the environment around women that enable them to enter politics and indeed work full-time. Because the gender pay gap in Australia, when we came in, was 14.1%. It is now 12%. But that is an underestimate. And we recently brought in legislation to force companies with 100 or more employees, i.e. corporate Australia, to reveal their gender pay gaps. It's a bit like a gender reveal, except it's a gender pay gap reveal. And what it did show, in fact, is that the median gender pay gap in corporate Australia is 19%. In some companies, it was up to 45%. And it also explains why we have in this country a situation where we have a complete disconnect between our parliament and corporate Australia. We have in Australia right now a federal government, a Labor government, which is 53% women. We are a female-dominant government. We also have the highest number of cabinet ministers who are women in Commonwealth history. We have sailed past gender parity. It is in the rearview mirror. We don't even talk about it amongst ourselves. We are now focused on the rest of the land. And yet in corporate Australia, only 9% of CEOs of ASX 300 companies are women. You're more likely to run a company if your name is Peter, Paul or Andrew than you are if you're a woman. So something has got to change. I think this is an interesting conversation to have. I think I welcome the conversation, but this is not a solution.
So is your argument against them that they are proposing the wrong solution? Is that your argument? Because a lot of the things you're arguing...
It's a non-solution. It's a non-solution.
A non-solution?
It's a non-solution. It's entrenching a pattern of work and caring responsibilities that have gone on for too long in this country.
But it might also work. Not everyone wants to work full-time.
What is the problem we're trying to solve here? If the problem is that we want to get more women into Parliament, well, you only have to look at the blueprint from the Labor Party. We've done it. We did it with quotas that were instituted by Keating 30 years ago. So that problem has been solved. But really, what I'm hearing here is that there is a problem with working women wanting to achieve. And the
maybe
issues
they just
here,
want to work part-time. Maybe the argument is just to have people who work part-time.
I think there are some women who do want to work part-time, right, and still have a career. But the problem is you can't tell me in all seriousness that 43% of working women in Australia, for them that is their choice. I know it isn't because I speak to my constituents. I had a woman the other day, her name is Vera, who stopped me at a train station. She earns a very high income and she's talking about scaling back from 5 days to 3 days a week. Why? Because her childcare costs are high. Now, childcare was something we flagged when we first came to government. It's the reason why we pumped $5 billion into childcare in our first budget because it was a priority. It was a barrier to women's workforce participation. It has lowered costs. It's taken the edge off them, but there's more structural work to do. The other things we've done is we're closing loopholes in job contracts that stop women from seeking the kind of pay rises that they need. We've banned wage secrecy, which disproportionately affects women. It stops women from comparing their pay. We've also criminalized wage theft, which disproportionately affects women, right? So there's a whole range of things, real reforms that we can institute right now, rather than leaning back on a gendered norm which has lasted for too long in this country, whereby women live off the crumbs. I am no crumb maiden. I do not endorse this approach.
Is it legal? I know you're not a constitutional lawyer. Can you legally run as two people for one seat?
Good question. Already, the answer is I don't know what the answer is to that, but already there are dissenting voices emerging amongst the constitutional experts. It's a bit like putting a bunch of doctors in the room. When you put a bunch of constitutional lawyers in the room, you get a whole bunch of different opinions, and that's exactly what's happening. It happened during the referendum we just had. Indeed. So I would be a bit circumspect about this idea. What I do know is that currently there is no realistic pathway to make this happen, but there are things that we can do right now, like making childcare more affordable. And also, let's draw in corporate Australia. Let's talk about the culture that forces men or compels men to work 12, 16-hour days, when I'm sure some of those men would rather spend a bit more time with their kids at home, even when baby comes home. I mean, this is why we expanded our paid parental leave scheme from 22 weeks to 26 weeks, and we've increased the number of weeks in the use it or lose it provisions, right, in order to encourage men to spend time with baby when baby comes home. Why? Because those gendered norms that box women in as homemakers and men as breadwinners start in the early days when the child comes home.
Look, I'll get to calls in a moment, 1300 222 774. I didn't think I would ask you about polls, Michelle Ananda-Rajah, but you're a representative in Anthony Albanese's government. You just listed a whole lot of things that you think are very strong achievements of your government. If that is the case, that all of those things have happened, the poll trend is not your friend, is it? I mean, the polls are generally the case that you are level pegging with the coalition or losing primary votes. Why do you think that is the poll trend if you've done as much as you say your government has done?
Well, I think firstly, the polls are reflecting cost of living. Cost of living has proven to be a much more stickier problem, a more persistent problem than we had anticipated. People are under sustained cost of living pressure, and I see that in my electorate. When I have people who are on higher than average incomes coming to me complaining about their pressures on their household budgets, whether it be from mortgage repayments or car insurance or spiralling out of pocket medical expenses, there is a problem. So if it's happening in Higgins, it's much, much worse elsewhere in Australia. And this is why we rejigged the stage 3 tax cuts so that all Australians get a tax cut come 1 July, including 90% of women. They're going to get a bigger tax cut.
But that's more of a listing of the things you've done right.
But
why are the poll numbers down?
Well, again, I think it reflects cost of living pressure. What I would say, though, is inflation has halved under our government. The last readout in February was 3.4%. At its peak, it was around 8% in December 22. Now, that opens the door for the RBA to start cutting interest rates. I would like the RBA to sure, they can peer over their spreadsheets, but they really need to get out there and talk to Australians, including people in my electorate, because Australians are hurting, and I think they are due for mortgage relief. I would like to see interest rates cut.
Just briefly, Steve's in South Yarra. What do you want to say, Steve?
I just wanted to agree with what Michelle was saying about the best ways to get more women to the workplace. I agree with her that it is a bit of a stunt. I agree that it might be a good idea to look at how we can get job share into the parliament, but that's not necessarily a female-centric issue. And I secondly just wanted to congratulate Michelle on her passion for all the things in her electorate. I'm a member of Higgins. I'm in her electorate. She's a great local member. She's really passionate and very hardworking. And I think we could all hear that she's across all the detail. She's wonderful.
This is ABC Radio Melbourne with Rafael Epstein.